The Big 12 just got a playoff spot locked in for next year. We are 8 months before the season even starts. The Big 12 will be in the college football playoff next year. That in and of itself is a win. That is not guaranteed every single year. Remember 2 years ago, there was talk that it wouldn't happen. But here's the scary thing and perhaps the catch. This could be a warning sign of trouble on the horizon, trouble of big change and things to come, because the Big Ten and the SEC are still locked in a real power struggle. So is this stalemate and decision that we got actually good for the Big 12, or are we kind of delaying the inevitable here? That's what I'm going to answer in this video for you, okay? So we hit the deadline for the college football playoff to expand. That is the newsworthiness here. It was January 23rd, and of course, nothing happened. We got an official announcement from the playoff. It is not going to change this year, not expanding to 16, not expanding to 24. It's just going to stay a 12-team playoff for next season, which, taking away all the Big 12 implications from it, it's a pretty sensical thing to have happen, right? We've only had 2 of these. Why do we need to rush to change it? If you're just thinking about generalities here, it seems to be going pretty well. People enjoyed the playoff. That Indiana-Miami national championship game was one of the highest rated of the college football playoff era. Things seem to be going pretty fine. But this was not a decision that was come to because everybody was like, oh, hey, this is great. We're making a lot of money. We don't need more money. Everything's awesome. No, this is a decision that happened because everybody wants more and more and more, and they can't agree how to do it. So we'll just stick with this for right now. Okay. Here's the reporting from ESPN. SEC Commissioner Greg Sankey has publicly supported a 16-team model, but Big Ten Commissioner Tony Petitti would agree to that only if Sankey committed to a 24-team field after 3 years. Okay, so Tony Petitti was like, all right, Sankey, you want a 16-team playoff. You want a 5+11, which was originally suggested by Brett Yormark and Jim Phillips. You want that, then you got to commit to go to 24 in 3 years. And Sankey said, no thanks. Multiple sources, according to ESPN, said that's not something Sankey was ready to do at this time, although there has been significant support for a 16-team field. Staying at 12 was expected because of the stalemate that has existed for months between the Big Ten and the SEC. Yeah, we're going on months here where there's been a real disagreement between these two. And I think the results on the field probably drove even more of a wedge between these two, because the Big Ten just won a 3rd straight national championship. The SEC failed to even make the title game for a 3rd straight year. Why is the Big Ten going to give up any leverage right now? I mean, Tony Petitti and basically anybody that's been leading the Big Ten over the past decade, they're pretty ruthless. They're not going to right now give in and say, hey, SEC, we'll cave to you because you guys run this thing right now. That's not how it's going. The Big Ten runs this. Like, this is the Big Ten's world. Everybody else is just living in it, man. They're even getting their bottom feeders to win national championships right now. Meanwhile, the SEC is, I think, a bit perturbed that they had to go to 9 conference games. That just happened. They're not winning the way that they want to. I feel like there's a lot of consternation there. Well, the SEC still tries to dig in and believe that they are the best in the sport, right? This is the league that just argued for its commissioner said they should get 7 spots in the playoff. They spent the entire last season laying out new metrics, presenting PowerPoints, all these different things on how to get better treatment from the playoff selection committee. So those are the two sides that you have going at it right now. And when the status quo is still good, even though everybody wants better, well, the status quo is still good. It makes a ton of sense that we just got here where it's a stalemate and nothing's happening. But is this a good thing for the Big 12? Is this a blessing? Is it calm before the storm? That's what we're seeking to answer here. Because if you're the Big 12, you certainly want guaranteed playoff access. That's a very important thing. But what you really want, you want as much guaranteed access as possible without having to sign on the dotted line that you are less than the Big Ten or the SEC. That's been the perspective of the Big 12 this whole time. We're not going to sign on for 4-4-2-2 because that would give 4 auto bids to the SEC and Big Ten and only 2 for us. And that means that it's just written into law, codified. We are lesser than those 2 as a conference. So if you're the Big 12, you like the Big 10 coming out with its 2014 proposal saying, hey, fine, what about this? 4 auto bids for everybody. That sounds good. That sounds good for the Big 12. That does not seem to be what the SEC wants to do. It also does not seem to be very popular at all with public opinion for whatever impact that has. And here we are. So if you're the Big 12, you're sitting here like, well, if the choice was going to 16 with the 4-4-2-2 model versus staying put, or maybe we wind up getting 4 auto bids at one point. Right now, you're like, look, staying put doesn't look that bad. It certainly is better than 4-4-2-2. You can't sign your life away and admit you are a tier below. Now, the Big 12 has been very supportive. Brett Yormark has of this 5+11 plan, which I'll get to more on this in a moment. But I think the fact that we did not go to that this year is a win for the Big 12, regardless of whether or not they're supporting it. That seemed to be a means to an end to avoid 4-4-2-2, because 5+11 would just simply increase the amount of teams from the Big 10 or the SEC in. They're going to further lap you in terms of how many teams are getting into the field. So I think for right now, that's actually a minor win for the Big 12, but I haven't even gotten to the major win of the Big 12. Okay. The major win for the Big 12 is that a part of this has been, along with the reporting, is that every single Power 4 team, or conference rather, every Power 4 conference will get its conference champion into the field, which is a change, right? It used to be that it was the highest ranked conference champions, right? The 5 highest ranked conference champions. So that meant that you could have 2 G5 conference champs, as did happen this year to keep the ACC champion out. You can have that scenario play out, and the Big 12 could theoretically not have someone in the playoff. 2 years ago with Arizona State, there was talk at one point that Tulane and Army could be the 2 teams, and you wouldn't have gotten a Big 12 team in the field. That is no longer the case. It is now the 4 highest ranked Power 4 champion, I'm screwing this up for you guys. I'm sorry. What it says now is the ACC, SEC, Big 10, and Big 12 champ will all get into the college football playoff. That's a tweak for this year, even though it's not expanding to 16 teams. Okay? Full stop. You will also get the highest ranked group of 5 team in there. And of course, we have the Notre Dame rule. If they're in the top 12, it's been widely reported, complained about, they will be in there as well. But I think the bigger picture implications here about what's going on with the Big 10 and the SEC are what really matters, because that's a short-term win for the Big 12. Next year, that's great, but it's probably only staying at 12 for another year. I guess we'll see, though, because the Big 10 and the SEC are going to have to figure something out. They're going to have to stop butting heads and actually put some kind of plan together with each other if that is going to change. But I would guess that it still is going to. So what does this mean? What should Big 12 fans think of the fight right now between the Big 10 and the SEC? Real quick, please do subscribe to the channel, like the video, all of that, totally free. Great way to support. Here's what I think Big 12 fans should be paying attention to is where does this go? Like what is going to happen? What are the threats of the Big 10 and SEC feuding? I mean, for right now, I think the fact that you're just not getting a unified push toward the 4-4-2-2 plan is the biggest win that the Big 12 has had of these two not working together. And it seemed to me like it was almost a coordinated ploy from the Big 12 and the ACC at one point to say, let's push this 5+11 idea. We can get the SEC behind it. And that's going to take away us having to write down on a sheet of paper, like sign it, that we are lesser than those conferences. So that seemed huge. You threw the poison pill out there. Big 10 starts thinking, well, screw these guys. If they don't want to go along with this, we'll think even bigger. Let's go to a 24-team playoff. And the SEC digs in and says, no, we don't need to go that far. We don't need to mess up the calendar. We don't need to mess up the regular season. Let's take 16, throw it out there for some more bids for the highest ranked teams to get in by the committee. We'll be just fine. There are some nuclear options on the table here if these guys really can't ever agree on anything. And I would again repeat, I think the dynamics of this have changed even since a couple months ago when they started to become at odds, because the Big 10 won again and the SEC is now back on its heels, digging in. Well, the Big 10 is saying we have no reason to back off what we want because we are the big dogs right now. this could get explosive. What are the nuclear options? Well, one of the nuclear options is the SEC just taking its ball and going home, which is a part of the reporting here that the SEC has said. This was in a CBS Sports story where there is, of course, always the threat of the SEC having its own playoff, which I know sounds crazy, but this is in line with like Ross Dellinger's reporting from last week or 2 weeks ago that we talked about, where he had said, yeah, the SEC might just want to go into a silo play itself because they can control the rules there. That was the story that was about the differing rules, who's trying to circumvent the cap, should there even be a cap? And it was, hey, if you're just in your own conference, you can set the rules, whereas it's harder when you're out there with everybody. SEC only playoff seems crazy, somewhat untenable to me. People would want to watch an SEC playoff, but like if it's not SEC and Big Ten, doesn't that sort of defeat the purpose, especially at a time like right now? How serious is that threat when the Big Ten's won 3 straight national championships? But I am just passing along from the reporting that is still out there, that's a threat for the SEC right now. If that were to happen, how does that change things? Could be a whole host of ramifications for that for the Big 12 if everybody just goes into their own silo to just play their own conference, and then it's back to are we just voting? The AP votes on a national championship at that point, on a national champion at that point. I don't know. I don't really know how that works, and obviously I think that would have to be down the road after the current college football playoff agreement is done. But these are things to be thinking about right now, and the things to be monitoring if you're a Big 12 fan. So like in the short term, I feel like a lot of this is good, but I will admit I'm a bit uneasy about, okay, so what does it really mean if these two are not going to be able to get along? I think short term good, because they were really moving in unified fashion, in unison, away from anything that seemed good for the overall health of the sport, and certainly anything that seemed good for the Big 12 or the ACC. They were able to stop that with Brett Yormark and Jim Phillips a bit. But now, how dug in will these two sides get? What kind of damage can they do if they're angry with each other and they're going to be like, the big deer or whatever, charging each other with the antlers? Like what collateral damage can come from that? I don't know. So short term, again, to recap here, if the playoff were to jump to 16 next year, you can say, hey, BYU would have been in this year if that were the case. Maybe. I know they were technically the second team left out of the playoffs, so people would say, hey, yeah, literally, John, that would be the case. What happens if they're deciding playoff spots with positions number 13 and 14 in the rankings? Does that change how they do that, how they rank teams? They showed that they would jerk around Notre Dame. What would keep them from doing that to the Big 12 and BYU? All of a sudden, is Texas, after its win over Texas A&M, just vaulted above the Cougars if it actually means a playoff spot? I think it's easier to leave BYU in that spot when, and actually I was saying 13 or 14. You guys know what I mean. The first two spots out of the field. That was 11 and 12, right, for Notre Dame and BYU. I think you catch my drift of what I'm saying. Those were not indicative of playoff spots, so it's easy to just stick BYU there and like, okay, we'll be fair. But if it's actually coming down to like who's getting in the field, that's when I would become more worried that a Texas or somebody like that pops up, right? So I still would tend to say just keep it at 12 teams, probably best case for the Big 12, because if it goes to 16, it's just going to load up on more SEC or Big 10 schools. They'll have even more chances, even more lotto tickets there. The disparity between the amount of teams in from each conference will look different, and it will look worse for the Big 12's sake. So I actually don't really think it's that bad. And of course, you get the guarantee. So that's at least something we can take some solace in Big 12 country for now. But this can all change on a dime. You can never really trust Greg Sankey, Tony Petitti, what's going on right now as far as, how it's going to relate to the rest of the college football world. So these are two really powerful guys. These are two really powerful conferences. These are huge, huge decisions being made for the future of everybody. I'm going to quote my guy, Greg Flugar from Peek Around the Corner, which you should be checking out his channel all the time right now. But keep your head on a swivel. is what I would say about that. Now, could the SEC or Big Ten actually break away? I know I bring that up. Could it actually happen? Could they break away and do their own thing? Click this video to find out how that could work.